Hey, this is Brent, lead pastor of Kairos Church. Thanks so much for tuning into our podcast today. We are currently in our series, We Are Kairos. During this series, we will be going over our vision and our values, what makes us Kairos, who we are, and what we stand for. And during this series, we're going to challenge you to get plugged in, not only to listen, but also to attend every Sunday for the entire series, to get plugged in through serving by becoming a moment maker or by connecting in one of our connect groups. You can also be a champion of the church through supporting us financially. We hope that you will take one of those next steps in your walk with Jesus. Hey, until then, I hope you enjoy this message.
And I'm glad that you are here today. We're kicking off our new series, We Are Kairos. And to say that I'm excited is honestly, it's a little bit of an understatement. I am super pumped about this series, about what we're going to talk about what it's going to mean for our church as we all kind of get aligned with the vision that God gave us for Kairos. So through this series, we're going to kind of understand who we are. That we are Kairos, and there are 8 values that we hold here at Kairos that kind of shape what we do and who we're reaching. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to go through each and every one of those values. Now, when you came in, you might have seen them hanging right in the door, and so there's all our 8 values. They're on our website, and you saw them in the video. But something else on your Connect card, everyone has one of these, right? You're like, yeah, Pastor Brent, we sure do. You're like, that's my voice for you guys. That's how you sound. That's weird. So the Connect card is such a vital part, and Chris already talked about it. Each and every week you use this to fill in anything that God is speaking to you, write down scriptures. But I added a little bonus to this one. So you have fill-ins every week. And so like our vision is on there, but it's not complete. So you need to figure that out on your own. You might already know it. You might have already filled it in. And then on the back is every value, but once again, it's not complete. So by the end of this series, you should be able to, when you come in on the last week, you should be able to write down the vision and every single one of our values. And so make sure you're utilizing your Connect card. This is a vital tool in being a champion of the church. And that's the value we're talking about today. That's what we're kicking it off with, being champions. I want to read this value to you. It's up on the screens. And here's what it says. It says, we will support and defend the vision and mission of our church. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with those God has chosen to lead us. So we're going to talk through that value today and what that means and what that looks like. As we get into our main scripture, we're going to be reading from Nehemiah. Now, I would tell you to turn to Nehemiah, and I would tell you a specific chapter, but there really isn't one. I'm going to be talking about the first 7 chapters of Nehemiah very sporadically, and what I want to do with Nehemiah during this series is share a principle from Nehemiah every single week. And maybe you've read Nehemiah and you know the story already, but just in case you haven't, let me give you just kind of a short introduction to Nehemiah. So when you first step into Nehemiah chapter 1, what takes place is someone who rolls up and sends a message to Nehemiah telling them that, Jerusalem, the walls are still in ruin, they're still in shambles, and this kind of breaks Nehemiah's heart. At that time, he's working in a palace. He's like the cupbearer, and so he's working there for a king. And so he hears about his home, the Jerusalem, the holy city, still being in ruin. And 152 years earlier, it was destroyed. It was set ablaze. The Israelites were sent to exile. They weren't there anymore. And since that time, some people have gone back. The chapter before this is Ezra, and they went back and they rebuilt the temple. But the walls, the security of the city wasn't there. And so they kind of talk through this, and then through planning, through prayer, through preparation, and through teamwork, they're able to complete the mission at hand to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Now, what I want to do today as we kick off our series is I want to go to the very end of the story. So in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15, here's what it says. It says the wall was completed in 52 days. So they went to work. And they completed this wall around Jerusalem in 52 days. In chapter 8, it goes on, after they completed the wall, it says, all the people gathered together. And in verse 5, it says, Ezra, who was the priest at the time, opened the book, opened God's word in full view of all the people. And as he opened it, all the people stood up. And Ezra, he praised the Lord, the great God, and with their hands lifted up, all the people said, amen and amen, and they bowed down and they worshiped the Lord with their faces to the ground. What were they doing in this moment? They were celebrating. They were celebrating that God had brought them through. They were celebrating that their work was complete. They were celebrating their hard work. And you see, every week at Kairos, we go to work. We work hard to build this church. Like literally, we build this church every week, starting on Friday. We're here and we're setting up. On Sundays, we come in, we're setting up and we're building this church. But every week, we also work hard to build this church, to build its people, to build this body of believers. And we want to make sure every week that as we're building, as we're working hard, as we're going after the mission that God gave us, that we are celebrating every single week. We celebrate through worship. We celebrate through prayer and praise. We celebrate when a VIP shows up or a second time or a third time. We celebrate when we get new moment makers that are becoming partners with the church. We celebrate people taking next steps, like joining a group or getting baptized. We celebrate when people embrace Jesus in their life. Today, what I want to do as I talk about this value, I want to share what champions do. And the first thing you want to write down, what church champions do, church champions, they celebrate. Church champions celebrate. Of anything, we're going to celebrate the victories and the things that God is doing in our lives, that God is doing in the lives of people around us, family, friends, and we're going to celebrate what God is doing in his church. And so what I want to do to kick this whole thing is I want to celebrate Easter, because last week we were here. We had a phenomenal week of Easter, and so many things took place. The first thing that I want to celebrate, and that is, man, more worth than celebrating, is our moment makers. Man, we had people here on Friday from 6 to 9, on Saturday from like 10 to 1. We had people here early Sunday morning at 7, and people were still here till after 3 on Sunday. We had 87 moment makers serving all weekend long to make sure that Easter at Kairos was phenomenal, and that is worth celebrating. So I wanted to give it up for all of our moment makers and that stand in the gap, that serve, that sacrifice. There are so many people that make Kairos such an amazing place to be a part of. It's such an amazing place for VIPs to come and check out. As we move on to the numbers, VIPs. So we had 25 adult VIPs check us out last week, and that's an awesome number. And these numbers are based off what we're told. There may be more that we don't know about, but 25 let us know it was their first time. Now, you ready for this number, though? We had 46 kid VIPs last Sunday over in the kids ministry. 46! That's an amazing number. And so for the total weekend, we had 71 people come check out Kairos for the very first time to hear the message of Jesus Christ, that the tomb is open, it is empty, and that Jesus is risen. So that's worth celebrating, that people are hearing, people are coming, and people are being transformed. Now, that leads us to attendance. Again, I told you we had 46 VIPs and kids, which put our number of kids at 117 kids between the two services last week. That is a phenomenal number. And if you have kids, if you've not been over to the kids ministry yet, like our kids ministry workers, man, they do work every single Sunday. And sometimes they're short-staffed, but man, these people are serving their guts out so that your kids can learn about Jesus on their level. 117 kids. We had 296 adults for a total of 413 people in attendance last weekend at Kairos. That is our highest attendance to date. And so that is worth celebrating. But y'all ain't celebrating. We're gonna go to the Lord. I'm gonna have to get down, face down, and just. We want to celebrate, man. That's happening, and you got to know that God is celebrating. You got to know that the angels are celebrating. But listen, the main reason why we do all of this is that people are embracing Jesus. Now, my wife spoiled this for me because she already shared it because it's exciting and she was celebrating. But 15 people let us know one way or another, either by raising their hand, by filling out a Connect card, or by grabbing a salvation pack. 15 people let us know that they gave their life to Jesus for the very first time last week. That is worth celebrating. That's what it's all about. It's all about life change, and that's why we do what we do. That's why we serve, and that's why we give, and that's why we become champions of the church so that people can embrace Jesus in their life. So we celebrate. Church champions celebrate. I want to pray, and then I want to get into a bit more of the story, and we're going to keep talking about what church champions do. So if you would pray with me. God, we are here today. We are thankful, man, to be here, to be alive. But more than that, God, we're thankful that we get to worship you, to have a relationship with you, to learn more about you, to grow in you. We're thankful that we get to be a part of a body of believers who loves you and wants nothing more than to have more people to come to know you and love you and live for you. God, today, as we dive into your word, as we learn from the principles from Nehemiah, God, challenge us to continue to be champions of your church. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. All right, so we're gonna dive into some of these, and I'm gonna bounce around. I'm not giving you the full story because through this series, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just share every single week. So I don't want to give you all of it. So we're gonna bounce around. It'll be on the screens. You can follow along. So the first thing that happens is there's a problem, right? There's this mission that's needing. In Nehemiah 1:3, Nehemiah finds out that Jerusalem's wall has been broken down and its gates have been burned down. So there's the problem. There's the mission. There's what we need. Now, we know that Nehemiah is not in Jerusalem. He's working for another king, a foreign king. And so he has to request that he can go and do something about what has taken place. So in Nehemiah 2, verse 4, it says, "Then the king asked me, 'What is your request?' He said, 'I prayed to the God of heaven and answered the king.'" Man, I love that right there. I saw this earlier. Man, how many of us would benefit praying to God before we answer someone? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that you just have that one. Man, start praying to God before you answer people. "I prayed to God of heaven and answered the king. If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you, send me to Judah and to the city where my ancestors are buried so I may rebuild it." So there's the mission, there's the request. And so the king sends him with all that he needs, and he goes and he inspects the wall just to see, man, the mission at hand, what is really going to take place. He says, "I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire." So he's there, he's inspecting it. And then there's this call to action in verse 17. He says to the people of Israel, "Come, let's rebuild this wall. Let's rebuild Jerusalem's wall. Let's no longer be a people that are afraid because anyone at any time can come in and invade us." And then, of course, there's a response of the people. And what do they say? They say, "Let's start rebuilding." And they were encouraged to do this good work. Now, in chapter 3, verse 17, what you're going to come to find out is that there are many hands, there are many people, many Israelites that are working and fighting to put the wall back into place within 52 days. Here's what it says. Verse 17, it says, "Next to him." And this is a phrase that you see a lot in Nehemiah. It says, "Next to him, the Levites made repairs." Verse 18, "Next to him, Benuni," I guess that's his name, "Benuni and his relatives made repairs. Next to him, Ezra repaired another part of the wall. Next to him, Baruch worked hard on the wall. Next to him, Mermoth repaired the wall." And you just, what you're seeing, and this phrase, in one of the translations, I believe it's the New Century Version, this phrase, "next to him," showed up 31 times. And what that means is that these people were working hard and they were working together for the mission that God had given them. We're going to talk a little bit about this in one of our other values, equip one another, but it is part of being champions of the church, that we are working hard, we are working together to enact and live out God's mission in our life. And so they do all this work, they get all this done, and then they celebrated. And the reason that they celebrated is because there was a victory. And we celebrate today, and we celebrated all week long because there was a victory. What I need you to understand that there is no celebration without victory. And there is no victory without teamwork. There is no victory without hard work. You see, church champions, this is the second thing. Church champions, they contribute. If you want to be a church champion, you got to contribute. You got to do your part. You got to get to work. Now, I've been in ministry now for a little over 13 years. And during that time, I've challenged myself, I've grown myself, I've read a lot of leadership books about leading myself personally, about leading my family, about leading a ministry, and leading people. And in that time, I've come across a lot of great books and heard a lot from some really great leaders. And now I'm not a sports guy. If you don't know that already, you got to know now. Like, you won't hear me talk about sports very often. And if you do, it's probably a negative thing towards sports. And no, I like to have fun with that. So I want to share from a guy today who's a coach. And as I've just challenged myself and grown myself in leadership, this name kept popping up. And I've learned so much from him. Anyone know of a coach by the name of John Wooden? John Wooden, anybody? Yeah, you know who this guy is? So this guy is the UCLA basketball coach who guided the Bruins to an unprecedented 10 national championships over 2 decades. Now, again, I'm not a big sports fan. I don't know a whole lot about this guy, but I do know this, that he was a phenomenal coach. I do know that he was a phenomenal leader, and I know that he was a phenomenal person and that he loved Jesus. And I want to share just some quotes from this guy and what he had to talk about when it comes to, when someone asked him, like, what is it, how did you get your team, so many teams, to the championship? What did it take? And here's what his response was. He said, I told players at UCLA that we as a team are like a powerful car. Maybe a Bill Walton or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or a Michael Jordan is the big engine, but if one wheel is flat, we're going no place. And if we have brand new tires, but the lug nuts are missing, the wheels come off. What good is a powerful engine now? It is no good at all. He goes on to say that a lug nut may seem like a little thing, but it's not. There's a role that each and every one of us must play. He's talking about in sports, but that's the same in our lives. We all have a role to play. We may aspire to what we consider to be a larger role or a more important role, but we cannot achieve that until we show that we are able to fulfill the role that we are assigned. It's these little things that make the big things happen. The big engine is not going to work unless the little things are being done properly. Coach Wooden reminded his readers that Michael Jordan was on the Chicago Bulls for several years before ever playing a championship game. And he emphasized that everyone on the team had to do their part and own their part well before they become a championship team together. Leadership guru John Maxwell, I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He's a phenomenal guy in leadership. He interviewed Coach Wooden one time. He said, Coach Wooden told me that he recruited a lot of average shooters, but he also knew each player had a spot on the floor where they shot the best, and he would design plays to get these players into the areas where they shot the best. Everyone had a role, and the majority of his players mastered their roles on the team. And Wooden said this is the last thing he said, on a championship team, teamwork is not a preference, it is a requirement. We're all called to do our part. Each of us has a role to play, an area to fulfill. This was true for building the wall. All these men, and you'll learn about this story a little bit more, everyone was spread out along this wall, and they were each doing their part and doing what they did best. This is true for sports, and this is true for the local church. We all have a part to play. We all have a role to fulfill. We are better, we are stronger, we are champions when we work together. Here's what I know about most people, maybe not true for me and not all people, but everyone kind of has a favorite sports team. If I was going to pick my favorite sports team, college football, it'd be the Gators. Go Gators. All right, cool. We got like one guy that's with me on that. And that's just because, man, when I grew up, my dad, he liked the Gators, and we watched games together. And so if I'm going to pick a team, it's going to be the Gators. I don't follow them. I don't know what they're doing. Are they even in college? I don't know. So that's a joke. I do know that. But we all have like a favorite sports team. But let me tell you, no matter how big a fan you are of them, you could be at every game, you could take your shirt off and paint your body and paint your face. Listen, you aren't a part of the team until you get on the field. You got to know that. You can be a fan all day long. You can celebrate with them all day long, but you are not a part of the team until you get on the field, until you become a player. So let me share a little bit about what champion players do. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 little things I want to share with you about champion players. Champion players, the first thing that they do well, you ready for this? They follow well. They follow. They follow orders. They follow direction. They follow advice. Do you think that Coach Wooden's team, all of his teams would have made it to the championship if the players decided that they weren't going to follow the coach's orders, direction, or advice? No. Without the players following, they're not going to get there. And when it comes to the church, the very first thing that you got to do, that all of us have to do, in order to be a church champion is, guess what? We got to follow Jesus, right? It all starts with following. It all starts with submitting our lives and what we're about to Jesus. We follow his example. We submit to his word. We submit to his calling on our life. We follow Jesus. And then as you get into a church and you're starting to get active in a church, guess what? You're a part of that church. You're a part of the vision. So what you do is you follow the pastor, the man that God has called to lead that church. You follow the vision, the direction, the teaching, the advice. You follow the pastor. And then in a church like ours and many others, you begin to follow the ministry leaders. As you become a moment maker and you're serving under people and they're giving you direction and vision, you follow them. One of the things that I've learned over the years in ministry, that in order for me to become a good leader, I had to be a good follower first. I had to learn how to follow. I had to learn, and when I was younger, guess what? I had authority issues. I had submission issues. I had control issues. And it took me years to fully submit. And then as I began to submit and follow, I began to learn and grow. We've got to follow well. The next thing a champion player's got to do, you got to lift, bro. So you can write that down. Lift, bro. And I just wanted to say that. Really, this is about taking next steps, but you got to lift. You got to challenge yourself. If you're not challenging and pushing your limits, you will not grow. You won't grow. I used to play football in middle school, high school, and I remember playing on the JV team. I loved it. It was so much fun. I'm gonna be real honest. What I liked most, and this will tell you about my character, I just liked hitting people as hard as I could. And in football, that's like they're like, yeah, go tackle that guy with the ball. I'm like, yes, I get to hit that guy. And that's how I got my anger out. And so I enjoyed playing football. And so I played my freshman year, my sophomore year, and then it stepped up into varsity, right? Well, I began to see a shift because when I got onto the varsity team, it wasn't just about getting on the field and running plays and hitting people. No, there was something you had to do before. You had to lift, bro. And so the coaches would challenge us, hey, come in early before school and lift. Or stay after practice and lift. And I'm like, I ain't about that life. You know what I'm saying? I just want to hit people as hard as I can. And so I wasn't about it. And do you know what happened? When I refused to lift and to challenge myself and to grow myself, I got benched. I didn't get to play. And here's why. Everyone else on the team is growing themselves, is challenging themselves, is making themselves better, and making the team collectively better. And guess what? Everyone on the opposing team is doing the same thing. And so me, as someone who's refusing to lift, is a weak part of the team. And so I got benched. And I stopped playing them. Really, I didn't care. I was done with football at that time. But it was a part of it. Man, it was growing myself. If you're not taking steps to overcome your personal battles, and listen to this, if you're not taking steps to overcome your personal best, you're never going to grow and you're never going to be able to help other people to victory in their battles or push them past their personal best. We're called to lift. We're called to take next steps. We're called to grow who we are. We are never finished at getting better. None of us is perfect. John Maxwell said this. He said, as I listened to Coach Wooden that day, I asked myself, how could he bring such success to the teams that he led? And it was the victory that he had over himself that allowed him to also help others become victorious. You see, when we make ourselves personally better, we make the team better collectively. We got to lift. You got to lift, bro. Turn to someone and say, lift, bro. Or you can say brah if you want to do that. The next thing about championship players, championship teams, listen, we're family. Champion players, they become a family. They don't just practice and play together. They do life together. And being a champion of the church, listen, it doesn't just happen on Sunday. And I'll be real honest, it's not just going to happen if you're only showing up one Sunday out of the month. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be a part of the team. Listen, could you imagine if someone was supposed to be on the team and they only showed up to one practice and decided, you know what, maybe I'll come to the game this day? Do you think they'd still be on the team? Nah, they'd be gone. I think so many of us, we have taken church and kind of made it less of a priority in our life. It's right there underneath sleep, right? Or we have, we got some yard work we got to do, and maybe we just don't want to get dressed that day. And you can roll up in here in your PJs. I don't care. But I'm just saying, like, it doesn't just happen Sunday to Sunday, and you actually have to show up if you want to be a part of the team. But even if you are here every Sunday, it's more than just Sunday to Sunday. It's more than just coming in and going out. It's serving side by side. It's praying with one another. It's celebrating praises with one another. It's getting into connect groups and laughing and crying and being challenged and growing with one another. It's meeting the needs and being there for one another during the week. We're called to be a part of this team, to be a family. We're called to improve ourselves. We're called to lift. We're called to live on mission. We're called to, live out the gifts and the purpose that God has given us. We're called to get on the field and do what God has called us to do so that as a team, we can help more people embrace Jesus. We're called to do that. We're called to be a family. And you see, when we win, we are champions every time someone embraces Jesus in their life. We got to do that together. The last thing that champion players do is they don't give up. They don't give up when things get tough. They don't give up when they're fatigued or they're tired. They don't give in. No, they press in. That leads me to my third and final thing about what church champions do. Church champions, they fight. They fight. When the going gets tough, they fight. I want to go back to Nehemiah and the Israelites. And what you need to know is that they faced much opposition. And I'm only giving you a brief little bit of the opposition here in a minute, but there is a lot going on. And you need to understand that you will face opposition on your path to becoming a church champion. You'll face opposition on your path to becoming a Jesus follower. You're going to face opposition in your life, and it'll come from many different angles in your life. This is what took place in Nehemiah. As they were building and as they were working, there were enemies and people that opposed them. Chapter 4, verse 1. It says, when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he became furious. He mocked the Jews. Before his colleagues and the powerful men of Samaria, he said, what are these pathetic Jews doing? Can they restore the wall by themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they ever finish it? Can they bring these burnt stones back to life from the mounds of rubble? Verse 6, it goes on, it says, so we rebuilt the wall until the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had the will to keep working, despite what was taking place, despite what the enemy was saying to them, despite the adversary and the opposition, they kept working. Verse 7, Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, and the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the repair of the wall of Jerusalem was progressing, and that the gaps were being closed, and they became furious. And they all plotted together to come and to fight against Jerusalem and throw it into confusion. You got to understand there are forces at work that do not want this church to advance. There are forces at work in your life that do not want you to grow who you are in Jesus. But just like Nehemiah and the Israelites, you got to refuse to give up. You got to refuse to back down. You got to stand up and fight, and that's what they did. In Nehemiah 4:14, here's what he says. He says, don't be afraid of them. Remember the great and awe-inspiring Lord and fight for your countrymen, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. You see, champions fight while they continue to work. You see, the enemy wants to use adversity to halt your advancement, both personally and our advancement collectively. The enemy wants to use opposition to keep us from helping people embrace Jesus in their life. But as champions, what we got to do is we got to stand up. We got to stand up to fear. We got to stand up to doubt. We got to stand up to insecurity. We got to stand up to comforts. We got to continue to work and fight for men and women who have not yet embraced Jesus in our lives, who have not yet embraced Jesus in our communities. That's what these men did. These men, as the enemy pressed in and threatened them and tried to defeat them, they kept working, but they took up arm while they worked. Check this out in verse 16. It says, from that day on, half of my men did the work while the other half held spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers supported all the people of Judah who were rebuilding the wall. The laborers who carried the loads worked with one hand and held a weapon in the other hand. Each of the builders had his own sword strapped around his waist while he was building. Verse 21 says, we continued the work while half the men were holding spears from daybreak until the stars came out. And I, my brothers, my men, and the guards with me, we never took our clothes off. That's kind of weird, but hey, anyway, we'll just keep going. They kept their clothes on. There you go. Each of us carried his own weapon, even while washing. And so they're in there, and they're like washing their hair and washing their bodies. And like, I got a sword, I'll cut you. You come up in here. You try to stop me from what I'm doing. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep fighting. Listen, no matter the opposition, we got to work and we got to fight. We got to keep going after it. And listen, there are going to be physical attacks. Some that you, maybe have control over, some that you don't. There's going to be fatigue. There's going to be discomfort. There's going to be sickness that takes place. And when the enemy comes and he tries to, knock you out with these things, and you decide to back off a little bit, that's what he's trying to do, is to get you to stop working. And instead, you got to press against that and you got to fight against that. There will be spiritual attacks because there's sin in your life, sin in other people's life. That's going to come up against you. The way someone did something or said something, the way someone acted is going to come up against you. Something in your life is going to attack you. Maybe there's a lack of reading in your life of the Bible. Maybe there's a lack of prayer. Maybe there's a lack of worship. Those things are going to come up against you and try to get you to stop working and to stop fighting. Here's what I'll tell you. Is that comfort defeats champions more than anything else. I think in our lives, these attacks come, and we get overwhelmed. The enemy's whispering in our ear, and we feel like we have nothing else to give. We feel like we can't go on anymore. Adversary, adversity, opposition, whatever it looks like in your life. something happens with your house, something happens with your car, your kids are being ridiculous, all that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just opposition. The enemy tries to wear you down. And as the enemy tries to wear you down, you're like, you know what? I need a break. I need to step back. And there are seasons of rest. And there are times when we got to step back, but that doesn't mean you stop growing. What that means is you begin to focus more on God, and you go to him to strengthen you and to challenge you. But I think what happens is in these moments, when adversity comes, when opposition comes, we step back and we say, you know what, I need a break. I need to refocus my life. I need to focus on God. And then we get that opportunity, but we don't actually do that. Because when we get comfortable, we get complacent. And we thought we needed this. We thought we needed this break. We thought it was going to be great, but then we squandered it because we weren't really going after God. And the enemy's whispering in our ear, and he's telling us lies about this people and those guys and what they're saying about us, and he just keeps whispering. And we get comfortable, and we stop growing. And when we stop growing, we stop advancing personally. And when our personal advancement is halted, it affects the collective advancement of the church. Now, here's what I need you to know. While that may be true, there is nothing. Not hell, not sin, not death. Nothing can stop the church from advancing. You need to know that. Jesus told that to Peter and Matthew. You need to know that. But at the same time, you need to understand that you are a part of the body. You are the church. We are the church. Clearly, it's not about a building here. We know that. It's not about a building. It's about us being the church. And your actions or lack thereof affect our advancement. The wall wasn't going to build itself. As a matter of fact, for 152 years, it sat there, ruined, destroyed. The church needs champions to continue its advancement. It needs us to step up. It needs us to fight. We can't get comfortable. We can't step back. We got to fight, and we got to keep going. The church needs champions to continue reaching people for Jesus. The church needs us to continue building this church. Again, this body of believers. You got to understand that nothing we do at Kairos happens by accident. We're not a community by accident. We're not generous by accident. We're not seeing people step into new purpose and new hope in their life by accident. We're not witnessing people embrace Jesus in their life by accident. No, it's happening because there are champions all across this campus who are making it happen, who are deciding to fight against opposition and to continue to work so that people can come to know the Lord. Nehemiah 4. Chapter 19, it says, "Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people," he says this, "the work is enormous, and it's spread out." And I know from my moment makers that that's what they feel every single week. The work is enormous, and it's spread out. And there are few who are doing a lot. The work is enormous, it is spread out, but it is worth it. And here's what he says, "And we are separated, we're far from one another along the wall. But when you hear the trumpet sound, rally to us." And this is the greatest thing, our God will fight for us. He's going to fight for us. Our God is going to fight no matter the opposition, no matter the circumstance, no matter what you are dealing with. You keep working and you keep fighting. You keep being a champion, and God will keep fighting for us. He will bring us strength. He will protect us. He will provide for us. He will bring his church success and victory. And then, when that's taking place, when we're working, when we are fighting, then we celebrate. We celebrate the victories that he's doing in our lives. We celebrate the victories that he's doing in the lives of other people in our church. We celebrate what he is doing in our church. So we want to be champions. We want to celebrate. We want to contribute, and we got to fight. And as we do all those things, man, that's going to help us all be champions of this church. Now, just like in Nehemiah, there was a mission, and there was a call to action, and there was a response. And so that's where I'm moving. It's a call to action. For some of you, the call is to begin being a champion of the church. And maybe you've been here 1 week, maybe for a few weeks, and you're still figuring out if this is your church. This is a call to be a champion of this church. For some of you, you've been here a long time. And my challenge is you continue being a champion of the church. No matter what you're facing, no matter what you're going through, continue to fight and to work. Maybe you've been here for a long time, but you've been a fan and not a player. My challenge to you is to get on the field. Church champions. I'm going to give you the church champion challenge. And you want to know how you can be a church champion at Kairos? Interestingly enough, it's all right here. The thing we talk about, the thing we challenge you to, the thing we say, hey, this is important. It's all right here. And if you don't have one, if you're not using one every week, this is the number one way to become a champion. And really, this is for you more than anything else. Because you can come in here and you can hear, but if you're not taking notes, if you're not writing down, if you're not being challenged, if you're not studying this stuff or going to God's word for yourself, you are not going to be growing personally in your life. So you got to take this thing to be a champion. If you don't have one now, listen, I would raise your hand up and get one right now. Man, swallow your pride and say, I need one of those things. Because I'm about to challenge you to everything on this card. Say it. Do it right now. Man, someone will bring, no one's even back there, but we'll get you one, okay? I'm saying. You need, this is how you become a champion, because everything that's on this card is about what we are about and how we help people embrace Jesus. The first thing that's on here, and it's kind of silly, but it says that there's a next step to attend every Sunday. And some of you are like, why do I need to check that off? Well, because maybe it would actually make a commitment to be here every Sunday. I don't know. Maybe just check it off. It could be a little commitment for you. Here's my biggest challenge for you. I think there are a lot of people, again, where church hasn't become a priority. It's kind of second, third thought. There's other stuff going on. There's parties. There's all this stuff. We don't go to church. Oh, but we can watch it online. And you can never use watching church online as a supplement to actual community in the church. And so I would challenge you. If you would say to yourself that, Pastor Brent, I come maybe once, twice a month. My challenge to you is to check off that attend every Sunday and to be here every Sunday for this entire series. That's my challenge. Maybe that's all you need to do. That's what you need to do to be a champion. Attend every week, show up, get in the team. The next thing that's on there is to get your teens to movement. We just kicked off movement a few months ago, and it's been phenomenal. It's been a great time, and I think as much as we need this and we need to be around our peers and growing in a community together, your teens need it as well. And we have that provided for you every Wednesday night. So if you aren't getting your teens to movement, my challenge, check that off. Get them there. Maybe you are a teen and you're not going. My challenge, check that off and get there. What's the next thing? It's inviting other people. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit. One of the values is engaging, not yet. It's talking to people about our faith and sharing our testimony, talking about our church. Here's what I know, just from social media. We always talk and tweet and post about our favorite sports teams. Some of y'all watch the sport that you're watching, and you decide that you need to update people on Facebook with the plays that are happening. Like, people actually care. If someone is watching the sport they're watching, they don't care about what you think. Anyway, little tangent there. But we post about sports. We wear our favorite sports team. We take time to go to the games, right? We do that. I wonder, how often do you tweet, post, talk about your faith, your personal faith, what you personally believe in Jesus? How often do you share your testimony with people? How often do you talk about your church? It's about inviting others, telling others about what's going on at our church. The next thing, right here, it says to become a moment maker. We talk about being moment makers all the time. This is being a volunteer. Again, this is getting on the team. And when you become a moment maker, what you need to know about moment maker training is that this is a 1-hour training where we talk about the vision, the values, and the history of Kairos. You're going to get to know us. And as you get to know us, we're going to give you a chance to be a partner with Kairos. And what you're saying when you go through that is you're saying, you know what? This is my church. This is the team that I want to be on. I want to be a champion of this church. And then once you say that, then we'll say, okay, let's figure out exactly where God designed you and has called you and has gifted you to serve and to be on the team. Just like Wooden said, everyone has a place where they shoot best. And I know every single one of you has a place in the church where God has called you, has wired you to make the church even better. Moment Maker training is happening next week. If you're not a moment maker, if you would say, I've been coming for a while and I don't feel connected, go to Moment Maker training. Get plugged in. The next thing is connect groups. We're kicking off a new round of connect groups in 3 weeks. And this is about lifting, bro. Okay? It's about taking next steps. It's about growing spiritually. It's about growing our relationships with one another. Get into a connect group. We have about, 9 connect groups. We'll give you a moment at the end of service to sign up. You can just write the number on your card. There are multiple groups. We have hang groups. We have talk it over groups. We have grow groups. Like, they're for men, for women, for men and women. Get into a group. It's not just Sunday to Sunday. Join a connect group. The next thing, it says begin tithing or giving. This is just supporting the ministry of the church. And giving of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Supporting us Sunday to Sunday because of what we do every Sunday. But you also got to know that you're supporting us between Sundays. because we are helping people. We are meeting needs. As a sports fan, guess what? You support your team because you pay for tickets to go and watch them. You buy all their merch, right? You're supporting them in huge ways. Man, I would challenge you to support your team, this team, Kairos Church, through giving. But then I'd also challenge you to support your team by wearing the team's gear. Now, if y'all might have noticed, I'm rocking some We Are Kairos stuff. I'm rocking a We Are Kairos hat and a We Are Kairos shirt. And actually, I'm going to give you an opportunity to rep some of our gear, to rep your team. This is a prototype. We have shirts that we are ordering. We've done pre-orders, and we're doing hats, and I want to give you a chance. When you got this card, the Connect card, there's going to be a merch order form on there, pre-order form, and you're like, I didn't get one. Go get one. And you can order some merch and wear and support your team by rocking your team's colors. You know what I'm saying? This is black and white, so there you go. But anyway, I'm going to challenge you to support. And then prayers and praises on the back. This is a huge part of what we do every single week. And we talk about it. And we make sure that it's important every single week. It's not just about what we do on Sunday, but it's about reaching out to other people throughout the week. It's about being a family, about being vulnerable enough to share the things that you're going through and being able to celebrate people that man, love Jesus just as much as you do. Very last thing on this card, and the most important thing, the thing that we all must begin with is following Jesus, embracing Jesus, beginning a relationship with Jesus. If you want to be a champion of the church, you need to give your life to the champion over sin and death. I want to pray with you guys right now. I want to ask that you bow your head, close your eyes, and I want to start with that. Because maybe today you haven't taken that step to be a Jesus follower, to follow Jesus, and that is the first step. You want to be a champion of the church? You want to be a Jesus follower, then you got to give your life to him. And if that's you today, and you want to take that step, man, I want to help you in that. I want you to just pray with me and say, God, today I ask your son Jesus into my heart. I believe that he died on the cross for me and that he rose again so that I can experience forgiveness of my sin and be given new life and new hope. Say, God, I ask your son, Jesus, into my life. I want to follow you. I want to live for you. I want to be a champion of your church, of the bride of Christ. Now, maybe for the rest of you, you've made that decision. You've chosen to follow Jesus. But you would say maybe you've gotten comfortable. You could say, you know what, maybe I'm just a fan. I've just been sitting on the sidelines. I actually haven't got on the team. I just want to pray over whatever the challenge is that you need to step up to. I want to pray for that right now. God, I lift up these people to you. We have such an amazing church and so many people doing their part and that are getting on the team, but at the same time, there are still gaps in the wall. There are still areas where we need help. There are still areas where we are weak and we need your people to step in and to help and to rise up, to not only work, but to also fight alongside us, to support us shoulder to shoulder so that we can continue living out the vision and the mission that you have called us to right here in Winter Haven. God, I lift up these people to you. God, I pray that they would take this challenge and that they would live it out in their lives. It's in Jesus' name that I pray.